Hey guys, so The Promised Neverland has recently ended, and this is going to be a little more serious video, a little bit less meme, because today I'm going to be talking about my overall thoughts on this series, because I've followed this series for quite a while now. I really enjoyed it, and I mean, after that first arc, which is one of the greatest arc of all times. I quickly fell in love with this series, and now that it's over, I feel like I'm just gonna talk about the ending and how I feel about the series overall after the 181 chapters. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so I'll start with the goods. The first thing I need to address, which I've already kind of addressed, it's that the first arc is amazing, and it's definitely the best arc in the series. It's an amazing introduction, and definitely go watch it if you haven't already. The second thing I want to address is that the main trio of characters is really strong. The Emma, Norman, and Ray trio, it's really strong, and it kind of makes me want to tell you that the characters in Promised Neverland are really good. Only the secondary characters are more where the problem is, although the villains are quite good in general. And the final thing I want to address in the goods is that, the ending is good. In fact, I'd say the entire storyline is really good. It checks all the boxes. Only I'm kind of disappointed with The Promised Neverland and just how it all shaped up. Probably because of the first arc, which, while it's the best arc, it probably set my expectation way too high. Like, I thought this was top 10 worthy, honestly, but it ended up being just a good series that does all the right thing to be good, but that never really reaches that ceiling of excellency, except for that first arc, obviously. And why is that? I think that's because it rushes a lot of things. Like, it established that whole demon society, and it barely plays with it. Or the best way to just talk about it is when they make a strategy, most of the time they're gonna skip to the end of the strategy. They're not gonna show you everything. Just every arc seems like they needed about 5 to 10 more chapters to really flesh out everything. I'm not asking it to become One Piece. There are so many things that needed fleshing out, and that's why it's kind of disappointed. And unlike other series where similar things happen, like all the arcs are just good, but nothing is really amazing, or like you got one special arc. The thing about The Promised Neverland and the good arcs is that they always had the potential to be amazing. They always set up the right things, but they never really touched them or expanded upon them, which is why I'm kind of disappointed with it. Although it's a really good series, I definitely recommend it to anyone who likes anime, and even some people who don't like anime. I think it's just overall really solid. It just could have been so much more if it expanded among stuff. And the best example of that is now it goes into a bit of spoilers. It's at the end of the Royal Capital arc where they just killed the queen, and now we can assume that the demon society is going to be in an uproar. They're not gonna sit still. They still want to eat humans. But then Mujika just says, "Yeah, we'll deal with it," and yeah, it kind of magically happens. She deals with it, and it's kind of disappointing, because the whole concept of the demon society was so well introduced, with the rich and the nobles who all don't even need to eat humans, but still do just because it's fun for them, and the poor demons who need to eat food, the human food, in order to maintain their form. It was really good. It was a great concept, and the noble exploiting that, but yeah, it magically fixes, and there's a lot of moments where it's just like something magically fixes things that could have been an issue, but it's like no, it's fixed now. Yeah, no need to worry about it, and that's why it's kind of overall disappointing. And now, just to give a few examples of what I'm talking about, because I've been pretty vague the whole video, like saying it's rushed and things needed to be more fleshed out or more developed. Some fight were cut short. I'm gonna go and give a few examples, but just know that there's many more, and you just have my overall opinion on the entire thing. So the first one I want to address is at the end of Goldie Pond. The final fight is very very short. A lot shorter than I expected. But that's not the problem. The problem is that Emma basically goes from being mortally wounded. Yeah, she goes from being mortally wounded to being completely fine in about a chapter in a situation that kind of doesn't make sense to me because they had to go back to the base, which was 4 days into demon territory, and they didn't show anything. It was like, no, everything's fine. There was no problem on the way back, despite the fact that previously in the arc, it was clearly introduced that there was a lot of dangers in the demon world, which after Goldie Pond, there really aren't. There are barely any demons in the world, which is another point that's kind of disappointing. And that just adds on to why the demon society was just not enough touch, despite the fact that they introduced all the right concepts. That's why that's why it really hurts. Or just in the battle for the Royal Capital arc. Basically, the arc is the final boss fight against the Queen, and there are not really any fights against the underlings, which is very weird because I would have expected like a war, not something that's close to a duel. But we got more of a duel. And now I've been talking shit about the capital arc, but I think it's like the second or third best arc. It's pretty good. Only it could have been even better if there was more stuff, especially with the demon and the city overall, just the mayhem in that city. Because of the plan of Norman, it should have been explored more, but it was cut very short. And like I said previously, the Mujika thing, where she's like, yeah, we'll deal with it. I don't know how, but we'll deal with it. And yeah, magically, there's a solution that appears, which is very similar to the ending of Goldie Pond, which is just magic solutions, which is very unlike the first arc that just didn't have those magic solutions. So yeah. The other thing that really hurt this series are the secondary characters, which I've talked about a bit previously. And the reason they're not very interesting is just there's so many of them and none of them is really expanded upon. And this plays into how it's rushed, how there's just so many characters, especially by the end of Goldie Pond, where it's just so little of them actually get screen time. It's always Emma, Norman, and Ray. But then I ask, why even just make them just focus on Emma, Ray, and Norman? And this wouldn't have been even a problem, but it's then they introduce them, they give strong introduction, and then they just let them go. There's only really a handful of secondary characters that I actually enjoyed, and that's quite unfortunate. And finally, in terms of underdeveloped characters, I think Aisha is a fabulous example. They took the time to introduce her, to give her a backstory, and then yeah, she did nothing. Um, she's barely mentioned at the end, and I just wonder why the hell did they do that? Why did they introduce Aisha this late as well? It just puzzles me. But overall, all the children that accompany Emma and Ray and Norman, they're very like there's nothing to them. There's really nothing. They're a plot point for Emma because they're really important to Emma, but that's basically the only attachment I get from them. It's just that, yeah, I care about Emma because she's a great character, but the other children's, like, it's just because Emma cares about them that I care about them. I don't know if you know what I mean. Yeah, but there are a few standout characters, even in the secondary cast. I think Hugo is pretty great. I think Jiren, the demon guy introduced at the end, he was pretty cool. But overall, the best characters are really the main trio and the antagonists like Leovis and Isabella. So my final thoughts on it is, yeah, it checks all the boxes to be good. Like I said at the beginning, and at one time it even propels it at the beginning, in the first arc, which is one of the greatest arcs of all time. Again, I just love that arc so much. Otherwise, it really does everything to be good. It really does. I think it's just me who had unreasonable expectations going into it because of how deceivingly good that first arc was. But other than that, if you go in and expect something medium, you'll be pleasantly surprised. So yeah, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed. A little bit different. I hope somebody watches this. My weird take on the Promised Neverland. Please comment if you agree or not. I'd like to know if I'm the only one who thinks like that, who thinks it was a little bit rushed, or if there are other people who thinks it's rushed. So yeah, comment, like, bye.